Hi, I'm Gary DeRigny. I was honored to serve as an infantryman with Company D, 1st Battalion, 12th Cavalry Regiment, 1st Cavalry Division during the Vietnam War. Please join me for the next few minutes as I present a brief video history of the accomplishments, the sacrifices, and the incredible heroism of the men of Delta Company during the unit's nearly 7-year deployment to Vietnam. At Fort Benning, Georgia, we trained and developed the idea of air mobile infantry, then set sail for the port of Quy Nhon, Republic of Vietnam. Delta Company went ashore on 20 September 1965 and headed for Camp Radcliffe near An Khê in the Central Highlands. On 10 October, the 12th Cavalry Regiment air assaulted into the Sui Ca Valley, we called it Happy Valley, in Shiny Bayonet, our first combat operation. There, Delta lost its first man of the Vietnam War when 17-year-old PFC Terry Wright was killed by a sniper's bullet. In November, 2 weeks before the Ai Drang Valley battle, Delta's recon platoon fought the Battle of the Hospital, encountering NBA's 33rd Regiment withdrawing from its siege of the Plei Me Special Forces camp. The following April, again in the vicinity of the Ai Drang Valley, the recon platoon encountered dug-in NBA at Two Streams. Frank Crary was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his heroism in that fight. In December 1966, the Battle of 506 Valley in Binh Dinh Province was Delta's worst day in Vietnam. 17 of our brothers were killed and scores more wounded. Distinguished Service Crosses were awarded to Roger Hattersley and posthumously to Anton Kennedy. In the spring of '67, the NBA's 1st Division threatened the Highlands, and Delta flew to Dak To to assist the 4th Infantry Division. Returning to Binh Dinh, the summer of '67 was spent in cordon and search operations on the coastal plain. In November, we were back in Dak To once again. We returned to Bang Son in December, straight into the Battle of Tam Quan, where we engaged the 22nd NBA Regiment on 15 December in Delta's second worst day. 8 of our brothers died. A Distinguished Service Cross was awarded to Donald Orsini. Alan Lynch was awarded the company's first Medal of Honor in Vietnam. There would be more. We celebrated Christmas 1967 with a USO show on Little LZ Mustang in the An Lo Valley, then did a stint of Camp Radcliffe defense before moving north in January to I Corps just below the DMZ. Delta arrived in time for Tet 1968, during which we lost 2 killed in a short, sharp fight on February 1st on the famous Street Without Joy. In April, Operation Pegasus sent us on an air assault in relief of the beleaguered Marines at Khe Sanh Combat Base. Having saved the Marine Corps, we turned our attention to the NBA base camp area in the A Shau Valley. Operation Delaware was the biggest cavalry raid in history. Delta would not forget the crash of an Air Force C-130 within yards of us, and certainly we won't forget being accidentally bombed by cluster bomb units, also from the Air Force. Mercifully, though there were serious wounds, no one was killed. We spent the summer and fall of 1968 on search and destroy operations in Quang Tri Province. Then the division moved to the Three Corps area, northwest of Saigon, to block an ongoing North Vietnamese incursion from Cambodia. Delta Company operated all of 1969 there, running month-long search and destroy patrols in dense jungle along the Cambodian border, and engaging in many small, sharp firefights. The first occurred on New Year's Day near LZ Buttons, where we suffered 2 killed and 11 wounded. The worst happened on 26-27 April near LZ Jake, where we lost 4 more killed. On 18 July, in a bunker complex near LZ Grant, Sergeant Rod Evans heroically gave his life to save several in his squad by smothering an enemy mine with his body. He became Delta's second Medal of Honor recipient of the war. On 18 September, Delta was surrounded by a large force of NVA and attacked at dusk with mortars, machine guns, and grenades. We fought most of the night and killed and wounded many of the enemy, but although many Delta soldiers were wounded, thankfully none died. On 31 October, a helicopter crash, the result of a mechanical failure, cost the lives of our company commander and artillery sergeant, the battalion commander and several members of his staff, and the aircraft crew. The complexion of the war had changed drastically after Tet 68, although America decisively won that nationwide battle and inflicted crippling casualties on the enemy. By early 1969, newly elected President Nixon had declared peace with honor and begun the drawdown of U.S. troops from Vietnam. Nevertheless, the soldiers of Delta Company continued to aggressively take the fight to the enemy. We lost 25 of our brothers killed and suffered countless wounded in 1968 and 1969 in a war that, by the end of that time, America was no longer even pretending to try to win. In late December 1969, Delta Company was temporarily attached to the 11th Armored Cavalry in Phu Quang Province. On 10 February 1970, near LZ Lee, Specialist 4 John Baca saved the lives of 8 of his comrades by putting his helmet over a Chi-Con grenade and smothering it with his body. Terribly wounded, Specialist Baca survived to become Delta's third and final Medal of Honor recipient of the war. In early May 1970, Delta Company and the division air assaulted into Cambodia in Operation Rock Crusher. Operating from LZ Jupiter and LZ Rodney J. Evans inside Cambodia, Delta destroyed tons of enemy material and inflicted hundreds of enemy casualties in one of the most successful operations of the war. On June 30, we walked back across the Saigon River into Vietnam. For the rest of 1970, we operated in the Phuc Long, Phuc Vinh, and Binh Duong areas of 3 Corps. Then in 1971, we moved on to operate from fire bases Powder Ridge, Timbuktu, Pace, Round Rock, and Gibraltar. For its heroism in defending Firebase Pace, the site of a costly, month-long NVA siege between 23 September and 22 October 1971, Delta Company and the entire 1st Battalion, 12th Cavalry, were awarded the Army's Valorous Unit Award for extraordinary heroism. Again, although there were many wounded during that fighting, no Delta soldiers were killed. The 1st Cavalry Division officially cased its colors in April 1971 and returned to the United States, leaving behind a single brigade including Delta and the rest of the 1st Battalion, 12th Cavalry. In January 1972, Delta was moved back to the area near Pleiku, where we spoiled NVA operations as the last American Army Infantry Company in 2 Corps. On 16 March 1972, we lost our last man of the war, PFC George Savigny. Finally, in June of 72, back at Bien Hoa, Delta Company and the 3rd Brigade, separate, cased its colors and returned to the continental U.S. Delta had been one of the first Army infantry companies on the ground in Vietnam in 1965, and one of the first American units to engage the North Vietnamese Army in the area around the Ai Drang Valley. We were used often by the Army as a blocking force, a spearhead, a rescue force, and reinforcements for other units, and we fought in all 3 of the Northern Corps areas, from the DMZ to Tay Ninh Province. During our almost 7 years in Vietnam, Delta men received 3 Medals of Honor and 5 Distinguished Service Crosses, more high-level decorations than any other company in the history of the 1st Cavalry Division. And there were countless Silver Stars, Bronze Stars, Army Commendation Medals, and other decorations for heroism. We lost 86 brothers killed during that long 7 years and suffered countless wounded. Unfortunately, the Army hasn't kept statistics on the casualties we inflicted on the enemy, the damage to their material and supplies, or the ground we gained. But in the end, our heads held high, we left Vietnam as one of the last American units, proud of our many accomplishments and of our sacrifices. Be it well known to all that the 1st Cavalry Division and Delta Company gave up the fight in Vietnam only after our political and military leadership ordered us to do so.